Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a Code Effective Resume Thursday. Hope you're staying warm wherever you're at today. It's January 12th, 2022. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that any comments you put in the Zoom chat window do not appear in the Zoom recording. And you are welcome to please put in your personal contact information so that you can interact with each other, and encourage you to be able to send LinkedIn requests and connect with the other people who are on the call by just saving the information in the chat window. We are going to be using the Zoom chat box, so if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just open up the Zoom chat window and put your question there as soon as you think about it. And I will stop occasionally and take a look and pause, and we'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. For those on Facebook, you're welcome to put your comments into the put your questions in the comment field, and we'll get those questions answered for you. We are going to review 1 or 2 resumes today live online, and you're welcome to submit your resume using the chat box. Just open up the Zoom chat box where you see that blue arrow, click on File, and you can attach your resume. But please delete your header information before you do so, because your information will be out on Facebook and Zoom forever and ever. So we just want to remind you that if you'd like us to look at your resume, we'll be glad to do that at the second half of this presentation. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called careerdfw.org to help those who are unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I started a second website, careerusa.org, to help those around the United States. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search that you've written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search that you may not know. It is available on Amazon. And since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas-Plano Career Focus Group. Since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team. If you're not practicing your interview skills, that's the important thing. You can spend a lot of time on your resume, you can spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, but how much time do you spend practicing your interviewing skills? A resume and a LinkedIn profile will never get you a job. It only gets you the phone call. So if you'd like to have information on how you can conduct or be part of a free practice interview, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll get that information to you. All right, I am your presenter today, so let me switch slide decks here. We're going to talk all about resumes. And I sort of dedicate this to Carol Burkell. She passed away in December. She led 58 of our workshops over the last 2 years. She really, was a big help, and I've learned a lot from her, and I just want to, recognize her and, just very thankful for the time we had together. Okay, so our agenda today, we're going to talk about the ATS system. We're going to talk about the one-page bio. We're going to talk about a master resume. We're going to talk about key components of a resume. And then we'll talk about we'll review some sample resumes, and then we'll open it up to anybody's resume if they'd like to present their resume. So I always like to start out with a little joke here. So you want your resume to be the one they remember. How is it you're going to do that? How are you going to be able to share that information with somebody? So let's talk about the ATS system. The first thing you have to remember, the applicant tracking system. There are over 100 different ATS systems out there. So you need to be very diligent on how you present your resume if you're going to do an online application. So the first thing we talk about is parsing. And what is parsing? Parsing is where, a ATS system is looking at the details of your job description, trying to match up and make things match, okay? So a couple key things here is, number one, do not use any special characters or any special formatting. The reason for that is because there's over 100 different ATS systems, every system will handle things very differently. So you need the most generically formatted resume you can so that the ATS system can get the details from you. Do not use the header or footer section in Microsoft Word because a lot of ATS systems won't see that. You have got to make sure that your keywords align to the job description. And we'll point that out in the second part of this when I show you a sample resume and how to match up your keywords. But keywords are very, very important. There is a system out there, a website called jobscan.co, and it is .co, not .com, jobscan.co, that you can compare a resume to a job description. You can compare two documents and see how much it matches. Now, you can only do like 4 or 5 a month, I believe. But if you clear your cache, I understand it doesn't know you were there the first time, so you can then do more of them to process. But the nice thing about this is it will tell you how close a match you are to the job description. Please remember that when you put in the job description, if they put in like benefits and things like that, don't include that in the search box because your resume is not going to have any of those search terms on there. So you just want to search the basic of the job description to the basic of your resume. If they ask for a resume as an attachment, attach your resume, because what I have heard and what I have found is that most resumes or most ATS systems, most recruiters don't actually look at the information in the ATS system. The ATS system just goes and says, here are the top 50 candidates. And what they do is they go to the first candidate, they open up the resume to look at the physical resume that was attached. So you always want to send a physical resume if you can. And then if they ask for a cover letter, send a cover letter. Here's another way for you to have more keywords in your cover letter and to let somebody know why you should be looked at. Not everybody reads cover letters. I understand probably it's about a 50-50 thing with recruiters. Some do, some don't. If your resume gets passed on to a hiring manager, they probably will read your cover letter. Okay, so advice from an expert. Charlie Zinger, many of you know him in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He works with Career Management Partners. Here are the top 3 things that Charlie tells you to please keep these 3 things in perspective. Number 1, technology. Your resume needs to be ATS compatible. You've got to be able to give an ATS system, of which there's over 100, to make sure they can read it. You want to make sure your resume matches to the job posting. You can't just submit a generic resume. You've got to customize your resume. Number 2, attention to detail, word usage, verb tenses, and no errors. People will throw out a resume for one little error. If they find one little discrepancy, think about this. I've got 100 resumes on my desk, or not on the computer, and I'm trying to go through those 100 resumes. I'm trying to find the top 10 candidates I'm going to pass on to the hiring manager. I'm looking for reasons to throw you out, okay? So if I find a mistake, boom, it's like, all right, go on to the next one. So no mistakes. You've got to make sure everything's correct. We'll talk more about verb tenses in just a little bit. And then the third thing, style points, such as how to display multiple roles within a company, how to be able to present that correctly so that somebody looks at your resume and goes, oh, that person's a job hunter. Oh no, that person worked at a company for 20 years, but here are the job progressions they had over those 20-year period. And we'll talk about that, and I'll show you an example of how to work that out here in a little bit. Okay, so keeping, more advice regarding an ATS system, you want to keep the big picture in mind. Number 1, you want to upload a resume that has no special formatting. You want to review the information that's been uploaded. So just because you upload your resume and then it sucks the information and sticks it in all those different fields, you've got to verify that the information that's in those fields are correctly and got put in the correct place. So just be very careful. I hear, like, if somebody says, they have their name Jeff Morse, MBA, some ATS systems will make MBA my last name. So you've got to be careful that all that kind of stuff, read all those fields, spend the time to make sure the information is correct. Number 3, if you apply online, and quite frankly, I recommend don't waste your time applying for a job online. what you need to do is you can go to LinkedIn, you need to find somebody who works in that company, and you need to get hold of that person and say, hey, I would like, I would like to get my application to the hiring manager. How can I do that? Send that directly if you can. But if you've filled out a job application online through an ATS system, find somebody in that company to call them up and let them know that you meet the qualifications. Okay. Go to LinkedIn. Can you find the recruiters that possibly work there? If you can't find the recruiters, look at the look for recruiting supervisors and send them messages going, I've applied for this job. Be sure to include the requisition number. I qualified. I would love to have a discussion with somebody. What a supervisor or manager will do is they'll usually push it down to the person who's responsible for that. So if you can, call the person up, first choice, send an email, second choice through LinkedIn to try to reach out, because you have a much greater chance of being able to have a conversation. Okay, resume versus a one-page bio. A resume signals you're looking for a job. It screams, hire me, I'm looking for a job right now. A one-page bio can be used in a lot of situations. It's a lot less risky because it's a great networking tool. A resume focuses on your work history, detail, and credentials. A bio will focus on major accomplishments and expertise. It tells me what it is you can do. A bio you can use in lots and lots of reasons. Quite frankly, if I'm going to have a networking meeting, I am always going to use a one-page bio. I want to send a bio out to whoever I'm going to be meeting with, because that way it is just a lot easier. A resume primarily is a job search tool. And my rule of thumb is, and I think everybody's rule of thumb here is, you never send out a generic resume. You want to have a conversation with somebody to find out what do they need? What are they looking for? So you can send out a customized resume that talks to those points. That's why a bio is a very effective first level tool to send out to people. So here's one bio. You'll see that there's a picture on a bio. It can be horizontal, it can be vertical. I'll show you a second example here in just a second where it's the other way. But you're going to have a little general background of who you are. You then may have a professional background, a professional biography, just listing the companies that you worked for to show them where you've been. List your education. You always put your contact information in here. And then you can leave, you're going to show some of your successes. What are some of the biggest things you've done that sort of tells people what it is you do? All right. Here's a second example. So this one's vertical. It does always. Resumes do not include pictures. A bio always includes a picture. So make sure, and you want to make sure it's the same picture you have on your LinkedIn profile. Make sure it's a good photo that you can use on both documents, because consistency. So like I said, so this gentleman did his a little bit differently. The biggest difference between the first bio and this bio, beside being horizontal and vertical, is that this person included target companies. Okay. Now, the problem with that is, if you're applying for a job or you're networking with a guy who works at Coca-Cola, you don't want the first job target company to say PepsiCo on here. Okay. You want to make sure whoever you're targeting has that company's name listed on there. So quite frankly, if I'm networking with a friend or a colleague, I would like to list target companies, because this then helps them know what I'm looking for. If I am networking, having a informational interview with somebody at a particular company, I usually don't want to list any target companies, because I want them to think that I'm just trying to, find out information about their company, not who else they know at other companies. So just be aware of the two things there. I am going to put in the chat box right now. I will put in the chat box the two sample cover letters, or the two different bios. So if you're welcome, whoops, hold on. Yep, and that went to everybody. And let me get the second one in here. All right, so I've included in the chat window for anybody if you'd like to download those. If you can't download them, you can send me an email and I will send those to you at the end of this session. Okay, so let's talk about a master resume for a second. A master resume could be 10 or 15 pages long. This is something you never send out to anyone unless you're applying for a job at federal government, because the federal government wants to know everything you've ever done. But what I say a master resume should be is everything you've done probably since college, any internships, anything you've done in your professional career that you may want to talk about in a job interview. It has all of your jobs. It lists names, contact information, addresses, the exact dates you worked at a company, all the areas of expertise, certifications, all your software skills, everything you've ever done. And then when you see a job description that you're interested in, you take that master resume, you save it as whatever your resume is considered, and then, or how you say, however your naming convention is as you save things, and you delete everything off that master resume that's not in the job description. This way, you don't have to think about it. Oh yeah, you know, I used to do that back in 1982 or whenever, you know, I mean, you don't want to go back that far, but, you know, you want to be able to just tell somebody, this is what you're looking for, and here's a resume that matches those details. So this is a great way. And once you do that, you never have to think about what you did in the past again, because you already have it saved on your master resume. I know I have a file folder that probably has 20 different versions of resume, because remember, you know, back when I first started doing resumes, you typed it up, you sent it to a print shop, they printed up a one-page resume that never changed. And then once you had computers, then you started updating your resume. You maybe, you know, you could have 10 or 15 bullet points for every contact, every different underneath every bullet under each job of things you could talk about. So I think it's just a great way. Once you've put together a master resume, it makes your job search much easier because you can immediately jump ahead. Richard asked in the chat window, bio equals marketing plan. Both are, yes. It's the same. Everybody has a different term, a one-page bio, a marketing plan, an executive bio. To me, the marketing plan, the difference is the marketing plan lists target companies. The bio doesn't list a targeting company. But to me, all those names are interchangeable. I mean, this is who you are. So it's the same document with target companies or without. Okay, the goal of a good resume. The goal of a good resume is to make it easy for the ATS system and screeners to determine that you're a good match for the job. So the first thing we want to talk about is form. We've talked about formatting. You want to make it simple, plain, easy to read, and we'll show you some examples here in just a second. What should the overall length be? You know, 1 page, 2 page, 3 pages more. As I said, if you're applying for a government job or an education job, they probably want more details than if you were applying for a job as a project manager or something. 2 pages is the standard. If you're a recent graduate, if you've only been working for a couple of years, you probably can get everything on 1 page. So here's a question I have for everybody out there right now is, what are the number of years that you want to go back and show, okay? So we've got 3 different options here. In the chat window, if you will, please put down A, B, or C. A, you want to show all of your experience since the very beginning of time. B, you want to show only the most recent 10 to 15 years of experience. Or C, you want to show the most recent 10 to 15 years plus a section called prior relevant experience. So if you will, in the chat window, please put what you think we're looking for. And for those on Facebook right now, please just put it in the comment field. All right, so we got C, C, and C. So everybody's thinking C right now. And quite frankly, you can do, I mean, I think either A or C are the correct answers. Quite frankly, I think C is the best answer. A, depending on how many years you've been working, may or may not work very well. But with C, with answer C, what that allows you to do when you have a section called prior relevant experience, that then gives you permission to talk about star stories of something you did at a prior company. I've heard recruiters who have gone and talked to candidates, and the candidate will go and mention a story. Well, when I worked at ABC Corporation, blah, blah, blah. And the recruiter goes, they're sort of dumbfounded. They're looking at the resume going, well, I don't see this company listed. Oh, well, that was before, that was 15 years ago when I did that. So quite frankly, I think C is the best, but there are times when you show all of your experience. Like I said, if you're applying for an education job, a job with the government, or if it's somebody you know really, really well, you show them everything you've done. Okay, what kind of fonts do you want to use on your resume? Okay, I have my favorites. These are several fonts that are on there: Arial, Calibri, Tacoma. I like those three the best because they're clean and they're easy to read. New people use New Time Roman, Garamond, Cabrera. The thing I don't like about those is because they have little serifs on them. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to read. An ATS system will be able to read any of those fonts, okay? But, I prefer the top three, Arial, Calibri, or Tacoma, I think, because those are clean and easy fonts to use. You just don't want to use anything fancy. You want to make your margins are generally an inch on the top, right, left, and bottom. The reason for that is if I print your resume out and we're having an interview, I want to be able to take some notes. Or the recruiter may want to print out a resume to hand to the hiring manager and put a couple notes because they had a conversation with you on the phone and they're going to jot some notes down to pass that along. So leave some space. White space is good. So, if your resume is really tight and you've squeezed down the font to a, 8 or 9 point font to make it fit on one or two pages, it is okay to go to 3 pages if you need to, if it's pertinent. So, if it's going to look better, a little bit of white space is really, really good. For bullets, the standard bullet you see right here is probably the only bullet you should use. Do not use arrows or check marks or anything else because a lot of ATS systems can't read it. Now, if you're sending a resume directly to a hiring manager or directly to a recruiter, you can send a pretty formatted resume with some, whatever else you want to do. But for an ATS system, remember, there's 100 of them. You want to make that common thread of what works for everybody. You can use bold if you need to. You can underline. I'm not a fan of underlines or italics. No shadows, no graphics. Don't use any text boxes because some ATS systems will make a text box. All that information in a text box will just disappear. It won't show up. No headers. And as far as those generic templates, Microsoft has generic templates just for your resume. There's plenty of them out there. The format that we're going to show you here in a little bit, I think, is widely accepted. I've had many other people over the years who've looked at this. If they send me what you think is a great template, it looks a lot like what I'm going to show you here in just a few minutes. All right, so you have to remember that your resume is scanned. It is not read word for word. So this is an eye chart. This is a chart that they put a pair of glasses on somebody that monitored where they were looking at. The red spots are where somebody looks at first. So on that first page, they're sort of looking at what the person does. You can see they're sort of looking at the first few words of a sentence. And then they'll go to the second page. They want to see a little bit more experience, and they go down and they want to see if you have the education to be able to handle this kind of stuff. So the first time somebody looks at your resume, a recruiter is sort of scanning it to just sort of get a feel. Is this somebody I want to go in the yes pile, or is this going in the no pile? If it's going in the yes pile, then they may go back and they will read it in more detail. The hiring manager will usually read your resume in a lot more detail. But I just want to sort of show you that this is just a very interesting study that, resumes are just scanning. They're not looking at everything. You see, they look at very few things just to sort of get a feel for the resume. All right, many people out there have a gap in their resume. Now, if you've been unemployed for the last 3 or 4 months, no big deal. If you've been unemployed for 2 years from COVID, that's a little bit bigger deal. So what have you done? So here's a couple things that you can do. You can add titles and add a job called community leadership. And then you can list some things you've done. You can list that you've been a consultant and list a couple projects that you've worked on. You can list continuing education. I've even seen somebody go and for a resume, they've actually listed home health care, that they were taking care of a parent. Now, if you do that, you want to say that the situation's been taken care of, that, the person's no longer whatever. You need to just make sure that, you're no longer responsible for taking care of that person. But you need to show just a few bullet points as far as what you've done, some consulting work you've done, even if it's free, even if, if it was a volunteer thing that you did for somebody working for a nonprofit. Here's a great way to be able to continue to use your skills. Reach out to a nonprofit and ask to help them. Any volunteering work, any leadership, any certificates or training that you've got, make sure you include that, because that covers a gap. So here's on a resume how you can do something underneath professional experience. You had community leadership and consulting. You served as a panelist and coach for the Dallas Practice Interview Team. You provide consulting services to a local nonprofit on how to prepare job search candidates, on how to evaluate candidates. So those are just a couple of ways, and whatever else you've done to fill a gap. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the key components of a resume. You've got to have a header. You need a summary. You need key accomplishments, which are sort of optional, but if you're in sales, and yes, everybody who's looking for a job is in sales because you're trying to sell yourself. But if you're truly a salesperson and you have quotas that you need to meet, you may want to have a key accomplishment section. Then you're going to have professional experience section, prior relevant experience, which we've already talked about why it's good, but we'll show you that. We'll then talk about education and then software skills. So on the header, you want your name, phone number, city, state, and zip, your email address, and your LinkedIn information. Now, I will tell you over here for your email and LinkedIn, make sure they are not hot links. So you don't want, how Microsoft Word will turn it to blue and then put a little underline on it. Can't get rid of the hyperlinks, okay? And the reason for that is an ATS, some ATS systems won't pick up a hyperlink. But if they see it's an email address, they know to stick it to the email address box. Okay, and the same with LinkedIn. Your phone number. If you don't want to put your phone number out there, get a Google Voice number. Google Voice numbers are free, and this is a way to put that out there. You never need to put your street address, but just city, state, and zip is all you need to do. Now, let's say you live out in Prosper, or you live out in a small Salinas or some small county somewhere, some small city, but you really, you don't want a job in the DFW area. You may just want to list Dallas, Texas. If you're currently live in Seattle and you're looking for a job here in Dallas, I would list Dallas, Texas 75248 or 75201, or, if you have a relative or somebody who you'd be staying with when you're here, use their address, because a lot of recruiters on ATS systems will go in and by default, most systems put in 25 miles. So if your zip code is more than 25 miles away, you won't be found, you won't be seen. So that's why I just need to sort of throw that out there for everybody. All right. No physical address is needed. Okay, for the summary profile. So underneath it, a summary is not an objective, okay? I don't really care what your objective is. I'm going to hire you because I have a problem and I need a business analyst who has a proven track record of documenting business requirements and communicates effectively with leadership teams and customers. Very, very important, okay? So tell me what you can do for me as the hiring manager. How can these are the kind of problems I can solve for you. I love the fact they use innovative at the beginning because it's just not a business analyst. use an action verb because that makes it more powerful. Remember, people, when they start to read something, they're going to read the first 3 to 5 words, and if they like those, they may keep going. Your summary should not be more than 3 lines, 3 lines maximum, okay? And then underneath there, if you want to list some areas of expertise, I think this is a great place to put keywords that are the keywords from a resume. And we'll show you in a second on how we find them off the sample resume we've got. But if you list key accomplishments, areas of expertise, make sure that the top 3 things that you can do are either on the top of the list or on the very left-hand side. Because if I interview you and I say, well, tell me what your top 3, you've got 9 areas of expertise here. What are your top 3? And you tell me user interface design, developing test plans, and customer-facing roles, I'm going to go, well, why wasn't that in the very top of what it is? Why wasn't that the most important thing? Because quite frankly, I'm looking for somebody who does agile. So just sort of be aware of that, that make sure whatever your top 3 are on the very, either here or here. Okay, this is an optional section for key accomplishments. If you're in sales, you need to quantify what you've done. And note that these bullet points should also be listed under the job that you did them in, because some people will go, I don't care about your key accomplishments. I want to see them in relative to the job you were doing, related to the job you were doing. So just sort of be aware of that. Know that, put some, you want numbers that are quantified. You want some information that sort of quantifies what it is you do and what your key accomplishments were. All right. Here on professional experience. So here we're actually looking in a job. The first thing we want to do is we want to make sure it's in chronological order. We do not want a functional resume. We want a resume. People talk about a functional resume to hide things. 99.9% of recruiters and hiring managers want to see a chronological resume. The most recent job followed by the next one, down, down, and down. You want to make sure that you use parallel verbs. What do I mean by that? Here we go, look at this. So the current job that the person has from 2014 to present, they analyze, ensure, they serve. Now the last one there, achieved, is in past tense, so it's underlined in blue, because that was a project they worked on in the past. So in your current job, you can have past and present. But for all the past jobs you've had, make sure that your verbiage, engaged, translated, reduced, facilitated, saved, are all in past tense. Very, very important, because once again, this will get you thrown out. If the person has to be an English major, that, recruiters got some English behind, English major classes behind them, they're going, well, this person's not even speaking correctly. They're not even using the proper verbiage. They're just looking for a reason to throw you out. Remember that. The second thing I like is include a 1-line description of the company. So right underneath the company, you list the company, comma, the city and state that was in, and then you list underneath it just a 1-line about what the company is. There are hundreds of thousands of companies out there. I've been doing this for 13 plus years, and every week I hear about somebody says, I'm looking for company X, company Y. I've never even heard of that company before. Did the company change names? What are they now? It's a brand new startup or whatever, you never know. So put a 1-line down to tell the person what the company is. Now, if you want, and something that I do personally on my resume, on your resume, I actually list reported to and list who I reported to. And if I managed or supervised, I list, managed 3 supervisors, with 70 reports, direct reports, or whatever it is. So I like to put an extra quantification underneath it to let people know that I reported to the CEO, I reported to the owner of a company, or whatever it is. It gives a reference for somebody to know exactly where they are, okay? So I would put that 1-line I talked about right underneath business analyst, okay? Because if I had multiple jobs at a company, I want to show the progression of moving up the ladder. So, putting that who I reported to, and if I had any direct reports, that would go right underneath the job title business analyst, okay? So be sure to put a one-line description because it helps people know what's going on. You want to be sure to limit the number of bullet points you have per job. The most recent job, all right, 5 bullet points. But underneath that, maybe then 4 for the next job, maybe underneath that 3, you know, prior relevant jobs, maybe you only have one, you list 1 bullet point because it's important. The key is it's important to match what's in the job description. And I think, you know, beside keywords, the most important thing is you've got to focus on results. Results on a bullet point sell. You save the company $5,000 by evaluating risk. You achieve 50% improvement in customer sign-offs. If you can provide a percent, a dollar, or some kind of number, that tells me what it is you can do for me. If you're just sort of, if you don't have any of those results in a job, in a bullet point, you're just telling me what your job description was. Okay, we've already said this, limit 5 to 6 bullet points per job. Bullet points should focus on what the results are, and the bullet points should not sound like a job description. I just talked about that, okay? You want to make sure that you are specifically mentioning successes. You had over 10 deliverables. You had 90% elimination and errors. Whatever it is you can do to quantify what it is you do. You know, I remember I had somebody who, they were a receptionist. I said, well, how do I quantify what I do? I said, well, how many phone calls do you think you get a week? Oh, I get around 400 phone calls a week. I said, okay, and how many people do you distribute those calls to? Well, there's 23 people possibly that I could send the phone call to. All right, right there, there's your statement. I handle over 400 phone calls a week, distributing them to 23 different staff members. That quantifies, that tells me what it is you can do and what you could do for me if I needed that somebody to answer the phone. Okay, so I love this game called the So What game, okay? And I use this all the time. This is one of the best things Carol taught me, and I just think it's great. So she had somebody, and she was working with a client, and the client said, on a bullet point, guided next phase brand evolution for multimedia artists and managed film production and publishing. That sounds like something on a job description. That doesn't really tell me what you did. So the question was, so what? Well, her answer was, this increased the business opportunity, which led to 10 new commissions for my client. So there's a result. So the two of them went and they redid the bullet point, including that result, to read, they increased business opportunities, including 10 new commissions for my client based on developing a full social media and PR strategy. So this tells me what you can do for me and what you did for the customer, and results sell. This makes a huge, huge difference. Okay, what if you had multiple roles at one company? How do you handle that? Okay, so you want to be sure to list the company name once with the full range of dates. So you'll see there at the very, very top, we've got company B, city, state, and over here 2010 to 2014. Okay, underneath there, you got one line telling you what the company did. And then here you're having each of the jobs, and you see, so what you do is you're going to have the overall title, the overall thing listed on the right-hand side. And then right next to the title, you're going to list the job, the length of the time you had working at that job. If you were to put those 2012 to 2014 and 2010 to 2012 over to the right-hand side, it would look like your job hopping. This says, you know, when I see it like this, this tells me longevity. This tells me you've worked at a company for a long period of time, and quite frankly, you were promoted or you moved to a new job inside the company. So this is a great way to just show somebody longevity, and that, you know, you're able to learn new things. Okay. All right. How do you handle companies that have changed names? Okay. Lots of companies out there have changed names. You know, think about EDS has changed their name because they were bought by somebody, whatever. So you have two options here. Number one, You can give the name of the current company followed by the old name, XYZ Corporation, formerly ABC Company. Or you can list the old company first, ABC Company, because that's what the company was that you worked, that's where you were working at. And it has since been acquired by XYZ Company in 2008. You can list that on there. So I would list whatever the most popular, the company that people know, it's on there. Very important to do that, because if you list a company that doesn't exist anymore, if they're looking up that company, what that company doesn't mean. There was a gentleman who worked, who was on this call last fall. He worked at Campbell Soup. Well, Campbell Soup has changed their name to some name, but you know what? I don't know what that other name is, but I know what Campbell Soup is. So for me, I would put down Campbell Soup and then in parentheses acquired by XYZ Company in 2019 or whatever, because that's the most recognizable name. Okay, education and software skills. You want to list your degrees. You want to list list of software skills can be modified based on the job description. You want to make sure that if they talk about a software that you need, you want to make sure it's in your job description. If you do not have a degree, do not lie, because if you remember, there was a coach at the University of Notre Dame who was coached for 2 weeks because he had listed on his resume that he had a degree from some college. And of course, everybody went and snooped and found out he did not have a degree from that college. He went there, but he didn't complete college. He didn't have a degree, and he got fired 2 weeks later for misrepresenting what it is. So what you want to do is, if you don't have a degree, write something like this: school, city, state, the area of concentration, whatever that area is, list it, and then list the number of hours that you've gotten it. Okay, so you're not going to list a BA, a BS, an MA, an MBA, whatever. You just list additional hours. All right, so here's a sample resume, and I'm going to put this sample resume, and what I've shown you for the sample resume and the job description, we're going to just sort of compare the two things here. So first thing is business analyst. You want to make sure that if they're looking for a business analyst, you put as a title of what you are, a business analyst. If you're a business analyst. Now, if you've never been a business analyst, don't lie, okay? Maybe you don't list the job title, but it's important that you, whatever you can, if they call it a business analyst, you want to call it a business analyst. If they call it a project manager, you want to call it a project manager. If they call it whatever X is, you want to make sure it's X on your resume, okay? Make sure it matches. You want to make sure that you get some key words. You know, they're looking for somebody with business requirements. Make sure it's in that first paragraph, because apparently it's important. You know, they talk about improving processes. Make sure that that's in your skills areas of expertise. You know, cross-functional. Make sure that's, you know, you want to make sure that those keywords get moved over. Agile, Scrum, Visual Studio. Make sure those things get pulled into into your resume. Take those keywords. So all you're doing is you're taking a resume, you're highlighting the important thing, the important words, and then making sure that those show up on the resume that you submit. So please remember, keywords are very, very important. Resumes get scanned, okay? They don't get read, they just sort of get scanned either by the ATS system or by the first person reading it. Resumes will not get you a job. They only get you a phone call. That's why I say if you don't practice your interviewing skills, you may have the best resume, but then when it comes to talking to somebody, you just really blew it there. A great story is I've been a member of the practice interview team since 2017. I remember interviewing a candidate. They had the perfect resume. The resume and the job description, they matched, they were great. But you know, I know why she didn't get the job, because when we did the interview with her, she fumbled. She blew it. Her resume was perfect. It got her a phone call, but once I talked to her, I wasn't going to hire her. There's no way. Now, she took our advice. She went back, she practiced, she revised her star stories. She came back, did a wonderful job, and within 30 days, she got hired after that, because she could then represent herself well. So if you're not practicing your interviewing skills, please do so. You never know why somebody calls you. So when you get that first phone call, I would always say, hey, thanks for calling. I really appreciate it. What was it on my resume that made you reach out to me? Because now you know what their hot button is and you know what to talk about. Okay, you know what may be important to that person. In fact, that's a great question to ask everybody you ever interview with. And if you interview with 3 or 4 different people, ask each person, because each person is going to have a different need of what's the most important thing to you? What do you need me to do to succeed in this? So just do those couple things. Let me in the chat box, let me load up a interview. Whoops, let's see here. Am I doing this? Let me attach a couple documents here. Let me put our sample resume in here. I'm going to put a sample T cover letter. I'm going to put a sample resume. Let's see, where's my resume? Here's the resume that we've used. And then I just noticed that I probably didn't show you all the bios because it looks like I only sent them to me. So let me copy those and give those to you also. Let's see here, and it's one bio, there's the other bio. Oops. Okay, so those are the 4 documents. You're welcome to download them. Like I said, if you can't download them, I'll give you an email address to show you here in just a second on what it is you can do. So does anybody have a resume they'd like us to look at? I don't see that anybody has sent me one. Anybody have a resume they'd like us to look at? If you want us to look at your resume, you're welcome to send it to me, take the header information off. If you have any question, you're welcome to unmute your mic and we can just talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. Any questions about resumes?
Jeff, a question for you regarding people that are working in creative areas. When is it appropriate to send a reel or a portfolio? And are there any standard formats that we should reference for that?
That's very interesting because my daughter is a graphic designer. She's a user and UX designer. And I've had that discussion with her when she changed jobs after she left IBM. I would add in the header information, beside listing email address and LinkedIn, I would also list your website, because probably you've created a website that has your portfolio or has things that you want to show. Now, I know my daughter, of course, daughters don't listen to their parents, or kids don't listen to their parents. You know, I told Alex she had this nice, very fancy, cute resume with colors and all sorts of stuff on it, being this is who she was trying to represent. And it was very, that would be fine if you were physically sending it, if not physically, but if you were sending it directly to someone in person. Now, luckily, part of Alex's package after she was laid off from IBM, she got to work with somebody like Lee Heck Harrison or Right Management. And they told her, hey, you need to have a resume just like we talked about today. So your resume sort of gets that out there. And I think, in the cover letter, you send a cover letter, hope you'll please look at my, here's my portfolio. Here's what I can show you. If you have physical documents when you go into a job interview, you can take things with people to show things if they're open to that. You can tell them, hey, I brought my portfolio along. Would you like to see some of the projects I've worked on? If you have stuff online, I would just include include the website link for people to be able to get to it. Make sure that other people have looked at it. Make sure they've, scoured every page to make sure. Once again, it's just one more document that could possibly have a mistake on it, a misspelling. So you just got to be very, very careful. So Rusty, did that answer your question?
It does indeed. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, when you're in more creative kind of field, you want to show your creativity. But when you're applying for a job online, you've got to make it very plain and simple. But then if you have a contact's name. If you have the HR person or the recruiter or the hiring manager, you can send them the fancier looking resume. It may be able to help. Tasha says you can't download. Can you send the link? Yes, I'll show it to you in just a second. So where you can send an email to be able to do that. How do you recommend reaching out to someone on LinkedIn who you don't know to inquire about a job? My recommendation for that would be you reach out to them and you ask that you'd like to get some information and advice. You never reach out to somebody asking for a job, okay? You want to ask for information and advice. You're doing an informational interview. We just had a presentation last Thursday about networking, how to do an information interview. Very, very important. It's a very simple, it's a great way to find out about the company. But what usually happens when you do an information interview, if you can reach out to find out some information and advice, is they'll sometimes ask, well, tell me a little bit about you. What are you looking for? Well, I'm thinking about being a job as a project manager. EDS is, well, not EDS, but XYZ Corporation is a very interesting corporation. I'd love to get some more information, and I'd love to get your advice. I'd love to find out more about the company, what you like about the company, and how things could work out. So that's sort of the consideration here, how you reach out. If you know that recruiter posted the job, so on LinkedIn, a lot of recruiters actually, their name is there and post a job, then reach out and tell them, I am qualified. When you reach out to them, I saw your job posting XYZ, be sure to put the requisition number so they know what it is. I am qualified for this job. I would love to be able to talk to you and tell you how I can help solve your company's problems. Right? I meet the requirements of that job description. Let's talk. Because reach out to them. If you're not sure how to even, links, sometimes they don't put email addresses, call the operator, call the company's switchboard up and ask for that person if you know the name. I'm trying to get hold of so-and-so. They sent me an email, but I can't, I'll need to be able to follow up with a phone call. They may or not be able to answer because of everybody working at home, but you never know. They may have phones forwarded. It'll go right to that person and get to their voicemail. But when you reach out to somebody, I saw this job, I am qualified, I want to talk. How can we talk? How can I let you know that I'm qualified, fully qualified for that job? How do you attach a file in a Zoom chat? I don't see that window option. Okay, so on the chat, right next to at the lower right-hand corner of the chat box, you see a little piece of paper, and next to a little smiley face and then 3 dots. Where that little piece of paper is, you click on that little piece of paper, and then you can attach the file. So if you want, we'll look at resumes next week. At this point, because we're almost out of time, I don't want to type anybody else's time here. I like to keep things down to an hour. Let me just show you a few closing slides, and we will get out of here. If you'd like to get a sample resume, if you weren't able to download it, the 1-page bio, any of those documents, just send me a resume, send me an email to resume@careerdfw.org, resume@careerdfw.org, and tell me what you're looking for, and I will get those documents to you. Sometimes it's a day or two before I get to it, but just let me know what you're looking for, and I will get those documents to you. Career DFW and Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Please join us every day of the week. Tomorrow morning, Friday, at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group, we're going to have open forum. We'll talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. The first Friday of every month, it's just sort of a free-for-all, and you're welcome to offer your feedback, your advice to anybody else's issues. So it's always a really interesting program. I never know what we're going to talk about. So please join us. Religion and politics are the only 2 categories that are a no-no, but anything else about your career, we'll be glad to talk about. Next Tuesday, for LinkedIn Tuesdays, Ruth Lipsky will be with us to talk about LinkedIn search engine optimization. So if your LinkedIn profile is not up to snuff and you want some great advice on how to do that, please join us next Tuesday at 1. Next Wednesday, interviewing Wednesday at 1 o'clock, you can watch an actual practice interview. The practice interview team, we're doing this in anticipation of being able to get back and meeting in person. We are only doing this on Zoom. It will not be recorded. So if you want to watch a real practice interview, join us Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And then next Thursday, we'll talk all about networking. Every session, we have a different speaker who shares their thoughts on networking. Our speaker next Thursday is going to talk. He's actually in job search right now, and he's going to tell us what he's been doing and what he finds success, what he's finding successes in networking. He's been in the job market for 20, 30 years. So every time that he's looked for a job, what he's doing to network and how he does it. So join us next Thursday for that. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, please click on playlist, because every time I upload a video, I go and I select a different playlist, resumes, interviewing LinkedIn. Don't click on the video, but down below where it says view full playlist, click on the red arrow and up will come a list of all the different titles and topics. And you can then go and pick whatever topic it is you'd like to see. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops, you're welcome to join the Career USA mailing list. You send an email to Career USA, +subscribe at groups.io. Please know you'll never be spammed, because I am the only one who controls the address. But what you will get every day is the title of the day, the topic of the day, and most importantly, the Zoom link of the day. That way you can join us on Zoom or Facebook if the event's on Facebook. So that's how you can do that. So please note, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full and part-time employees. Please consider making a donation when you get your next job. So thank you for joining us today. There's that email address. Is the previous networking Zoom session available to watch? Yes, just go to the Career USA YouTube channel, click on networking, and it should be the very first video in chronological order from the most current one on top. If not, click on the little sort button, and it'll get it back the other way. And you can go back and hear that. So if there's anything else I can do, if anybody's got any questions, please have a great afternoon, and we'll see you hopefully tomorrow morning.